Good day everybody, this is Peter from Tales Productions and welcome back to Star Trek Online. This is a free-to-play account playing through the story of a 23rd century Starfleet officer, and we are here today to discuss the Delta Quadrant, because we've finished it now. That was the end. We've just completed the entire Delta Quadrant storyline, and it was a big one. It was a long one, wasn't it? In fact, I was going to check before starting this video, but I think I'm counting as I'm talking. For some reason it's working. That's 16 missions. Which I think is definitely one of the longer ones. So the Klingon War was a bit longer maybe. But other than that, is that the second longest? It's a wonderful one. Really long. And what I'd like to do now is a quick review of that. So if you've seen these before, then it really is just a chat. So I'm not going to be doing any sort of gameplay while doing this. I really want to focus on chatting the merits of the storyline. And I don't even have any housekeeping or anything to do today. I'm just going to be jumping straight into the Iconian War. I'll be doing a couple of replaying the last mission to get the full set, but then I'm going to jump straight in. So no more housekeeping either. It's just a very short episode, a quick chat. So let's get into it straight away. I want to dive in. So the first thing that I always talk about in these reviews is the story itself. Right. So every one of these storylines is linked to something in Star Trek. So by that I mean a series of Star Trek. So a lot of the earlier ones being more to do with maybe the Next Generation, then with the Cardassians pushing over towards the Deep Space Nine story, Breen being Deep Space Nine, Borg with the Next Generation, I guess, with a bit of Voyager thrown in there. New Romulus is an outlier, but I think we can all forget about New Romulus. I know I'd like to. Then it goes very heavily Voyager focused for the Solanae Dyson Sphere, right? With the Delta Quadrant influence and the Voth. And I think I have said before that my favourite Star Trek series is Deep Space Nine. So that's why the Cardassian Breen sort of storylines were massive to me. They were really good. But Voyager is always sort of up there with my favourites, and it's a weird one for me because when we first started watching Voyager, I remember I used to watch Next Generation with my family, but they'd sort of gone off a little bit in Deep Space Nine, and as soon as I started watching Voyager they really went off it. They really didn't like the start, like the first few episodes, so I was the only one that continued watching it, and I really got into it, really liked it, but I'd still say Deep Space Nine is my favourite, even though Voyager I think is a very close second. So going into the Delta Quadrant storyline, I think I was even more excited for this than I was for the Cardassian and Breen ones. Probably just because that's Cardassian and Breen and all that kind of stuff is closer to home, and you're sort of getting references to Deep Space Nine in some of the other storylines, or more so anyway. And Victory is Life has obviously come out, so they're quite heavily Deep Space Nine, whereas Voyager was sort of forgotten about and not really referenced. So I think I was more excited about getting into it, possibly. So quite good to get onto Voyager. That was a big thing. So obviously Deep Space Nine had a big remake for Victory is Life, and going through the Cardassian and Breen storylines, you get to see Deep Space Nine a lot. You don't get to see the new Deep Space Nine, actually. I wonder if they've changed it yet. But I played those after the expansion had come out, and you still, during the missions within those storylines, you still went to Deep Space Nine, as in the old one, before it had been remade, which is a bit weird. But going on to Voyager, which you get to do a lot throughout the Delta Quadrant storyline, is really good. I mentioned it every single time, I think. I love the Voyager interior in this build, or in this game. So there's the scale of it, the sizing of the rooms and the hallways, it's all perfect. It's all really good. I wish they'd apply that to every other ship. Not Space Station, it's right that Space Stations can be this, sort of massive and big. But for the ships, Voyager was so good. So good. So that was a massive bonus for me. And you get to go on there in the Mindscape mission. I don't think... The Escalation was just an introduction, I think. And then in Mindscape you get to go onto Voyager and walk around it. So that's such a great introduction to the whole thing. One of my favourite sort of starter episodes. Even though Mindscape wasn't really the start of the Delta Quadrant. It was really the end of the Solanae Dyson Sphere. The start of the Delta Quadrant was really Reunion and Revelations. Which again was really good. Okay, so this is going to be a common theme of the Delta Quadrant. I think I'll just come out there and say it right now. I absolutely love the storyline. I think it was incredible. The way it revealed things at certain points Really kind of basic storytelling. I know you're going to say, but that's how you tell a story. You build up propositions, then you explain things, then you reveal differences and reveal side stories, and then you resolve it. It's a very simple thing, but the timing was perfect. The way it was laid out in the episodes, I loved it. Really, really good. And that leads us to where it starts off the Delta Quadrant story, where the Vardoir come in. Now, the Vardoir, I'd actually never seen. So I found out during this that I hadn't seen 2 Voyager episodes. Of the whole 7 seasons, I hadn't seen 2 episodes. And one of them was the Vardoir episode. So it turns out the whole basis of this sort of storyline, I didn't even know where they came from. So I went back and watched that after the, I think it was Revelations where you first see the Vardoir? Maybe? So yeah, I went back and watched that episode, and then I sort of knew it all. But I didn't know when I first saw this, so it was a bit of an out-of-the-blue weird moment. And even after seeing it, they're sort of a throwaway race in a random episode of Voyager. Like, they're not a main story arc in the TV series. So it's interesting that they were chosen to make a main story arc in the game. I like the choice. I really like the choice, especially because of the big reveal at the end. But before we get to that, a massive part of the Delta Quadrant storyline is the Kabali Crisis. And I think the Kabali Crisis was the epitome of an Adventure Zone style of an area. They haven't got the entire storyline, 18 odd missions, all going on this Adventure Zone. That would have been too much. It would have been awful. So they've got 3 episodes, and each of those included 3 or 4 smaller episodes within it. And it would just say you have to complete these and then you complete this one episode. Perfect way of doing it because they were much smaller than the other ones that we've done. I'm kind of referencing New Romulus without saying it, so let's just say it. This is the right way of doing a New Romulus. It's how New Romulus should have been done. And it's so good, so fun to play, really well done. And it's not like you have to do Kabali Crisis Act 1, then 2, then 3. Maybe that would have even been too much. It's broken up by these full-on episodes in between it. And they were great episodes as well, where it introduced the Vardoir being taken over or controlled by the neural parasites. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed that. So, storyline-wise, and alliances. What a great episode. We have to go around building the Delta Alliance. So good. All right. Okay, I'm not going to go through each and every episode, because at the end of all of these, I think I ended up saying how much I liked them and enjoyed them. They were really, really quality. As far as storyline goes, it did perfectly. The telling of the story, it did perfect, but it also had so many different arcs working together. So you had the Vardoir and the neural parasites, then you had Harry Kim and his sort of double, I guess, the 2 Harry Kims, basically, and then at the end it brought in the Iconians and the Alachi as well. I mean, so good, so well that it was so well done. Really big fan of that, and it polished them all off as well. It finished all of the stories. It didn't leave anything hanging, which is really good, except the whole sealer thing, but obviously one thing has to go into the next storyline, doesn't it? So yeah. Okay, storyline wise, I'm thinking it's perfect. I think it's really good. Exactly what I wanted to see from a Voyager focused storyline. Absolutely brilliant. Then the next thing I'd like to talk about is, I think I'm doing this in the right order, the difficulty. So I found this really hard to judge difficulty wise because quite early on I obtained a tier 6 ship. So let's say I didn't get that. How many times extra would I have died? Because a tier 6 ship really does make a massive difference to what you had before. So I'm wondering if that's really a fair representation of how difficult this is compared to, say, for instance, the Solanae Dyson Sphere storyline. So I have to just rate the difficulty on what I had at my disposal, which was obviously a tier 6 ship with all the gear that I have. And I did at the very start of the storyline. In fact, 3 times throughout the Delta Quadrant storyline, I've sort of rebuilt. I've put more effort into my build and changing things and improving in both ground and space for the first time. So I obviously really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. I think the difficulty is about right, maybe a tiny little bit too easy, which is weird for me to say because I think I even died a few times, but never to the same degree as in the Borg or what was the other one? Romulan mystery maybe at the end there. Definitely the Borg, maybe the end of the Breen invasion as well. But they were just so overtuned and so bad as far as difficulty goes. I think this is maybe a tiny little bit easier than it should be, but still, it still gave that level of difficulty, especially in sort of the last Vardoir attack, the takedown. Yeah, takedown, wasn't it? Where you had to bring in your allies and stuff in different waves. Really cool, really well done, and it actually made you think about what you were doing. And I was told I was going to die actually a few times in that. I think one of my Twitch chat owe me 10 quid at least, because we had a bet on. So I didn't die as much as he thought. It was really good because you had to sort of stay away and let your allies take a bit of the aggro. So you had to think about it. Maybe the difficulty was right for that then. Maybe I'm just thinking because I was approaching it in a certain tactical way that made it a bit easier. Not sure. But difficulty-wise, about right, possibly a tiny bit too easy. Possibly. So, then I can move on to the different mechanics. So, I think in the Somni Dyson Sphere and New Romulus, I did raise mechanics as being something that I liked them bringing into the game. So any new mechanics they introduce I think are good. That includes new puzzles and things like that. Now, mechanics-wise, I think in this were really good. Boss fights were very different in the Delta Quadrant storyline. You actually had things to do, there were things to interact with in the room, and that was done much better. So mechanics-wise, a massive improvement, but also puzzles. Now, there are a few different types of puzzles that are sort of the text-based puzzles where you're reading text and then you press like an option at the end, and then you complete a puzzle or you don't. And they are still just as bad as ever. Even in this storyline, they're still not good. So when I was studying the artifact, for instance, in What's Left Behind, at the start of it, it said you have to. There are switches. You won't know which ones are in the right position, but you will know how many are in the right position. There are 3 of them. They're on, off, on. How many are right? 2 of them are right. So now you turn 1 to off, and now 1 is right. So you know that one needs to be on. That's not a puzzle. That's not a puzzle. It's such a simple, logical problem. It doesn't even register as a puzzle. So that kind of thing needs a bit of improvement. However, the massive step that they made in the very last mission in Dust to Dust with more sort of physical and dexterous puzzles, with the sort of jumping puzzles, which I never thought would work in Star Trek Online, but they did it right. That was much better. Much, much better. More of that would be better. Although I know Dust to Dust was an anniversary episode, so it's a bit of a special case. I know they could put a lot more effort into it. But yeah, that was done very well. So some puzzles had made a massive step forward and were really good. More of the physical puzzles, but they still struggle with the intellectual logic puzzles. Still doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the jumping puzzles as such, that type, that was a big step forward. Really good. Much, much better. And then I think there's only one more thing that I really need to talk about, and that's the age-old problem of polish, which obviously I used to bring up quite a bit. I don't think I have in the last sort of 2 or 3 of these reviews, but polish has always been an issue, I thought, in Star Trek Online, where they've got such a great storyline and such a good base, and then it's just ruined by there being like tiny bugs here and there. One thing I did notice throughout the Delta Quadrant storyline, and keep in mind that it's a much longer storyline, so there are much more possibilities and chances for problems and for bugs to occur. I noticed there were actually slightly less bugs, I think. I'm not sure if I said, like, that one's a bug, a bit less, because that's my phrase apparently now, but I noticed less bugs, I think, in the Delta Quadrant, so I think they made a step forward in the Delta Quadrant as far as polish goes as well. And I do think the general writing and the cinematics, the way they did some of the recaps as well, I remember that a couple of times. Yeah, all that was great. All that was really good. So polish-wise, I think generally Delta Quadrant was much better. There has been, obviously there has to be a downside. It wouldn't be one of my reviews if there wasn't a negative point, but I think maybe it comes under polish. I assume it does, but in the Delta Quadrant storyline, I suffered personally from quite a lot of disconnecting. So it would normally be in a loading screen. It would just drop me out to the login screen. And I couldn't tell why. I mean, there could be a few reasons as far as my computer goes. I don't think that's the case, but it is possible. It's particularly hot in the UK right now. We're having a massive heat wave, so maybe it's because in the past couple of weeks we've been up to like 30 degrees in here, and my computer can't handle that. But it doesn't seem that would be the case. That would normally just crash out the game, wouldn't it? Whereas this was literally as if it was crashing, not crashing at all. It's not the right word. I don't know. It seemed like something on the server side anyway that was not allowing it out and just dumping it out to the loading screen or login screen. Sorry, which was a bit strange, little bit strange. But that's the only downside as far as polish goes. I honestly think it was a massive step forward. Really, really good. And I really hope that continues into the Iconium War, because the Iconium Wars is sort of the iconic war or storyline for Star Trek, I think. I mean, they were the massive sort of mentioned in every series race, right? And they've become that in Star Trek Online as well. They've, like, all the way through all these storylines, they keep getting the odd mention. So it's sort of been building up to this, and I like that. It's cool. So, Delta Quadrant then. I don't know how many times I've said at the end of a storyline, this is my new favourite storyline. I think it's only twice. I hope it's only twice. But unfortunately, it's going to have to be a third time. I think Delta Quadrant is now my favourite storyline. Just like if I was to pinpoint something, it's the way they interjected the Adventure Zone so well into the full-on 18 episodes of missions, of actual story. I just think it's so perfectly well done. And yeah, Delta Quadrant's got to be up there. And I have to do the last one 2 more times to get the set. And I'm not dreading that. I'm actually looking forward to doing it. So yeah, that's a good sign for any game, I think. So that is the Delta Quadrant. And that's me done. So in the next episode, I'll be moving on to the Iconium War, still in my Myrmidon, my Itijara Dreadnought Cruiser, with the same build. Nothing will have changed. I don't think anything will have changed anyway. I'll let you know if it does, obviously, in the next mission. And with my same build here as well. Yeah, I don't see why any of that would change. Cool. So that is it. That was the Delta Quadrant. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with the points I've made. Have you played through it recently? And if so, did you have any of the same problems I had? And how did you feel about the difficulty as well? Do you have a tier 6 ship, and did you find that made a massive difference? All these things, I'd love to know how my gameplay experience has matched up with yours. That'd be lovely. But that's it for the Delta Quadrant storylines. Thank you very, very much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed and are enjoying, and probably most importantly, will enjoy. But by far the most important thing is to look forward to the next episode of Star Trek Online.